really excited to talk to you about this subject, Jane. Attunement with your horses.
Yeah.
Because I had an experience, attunement with a nervous system of equines, of horses. And maybe I'll start with a experience I had with you while I was riding on the trails near your home and in the rainforest jungle of Costa Rica. And also I noticed while I was grooming them afterwards too. You and I were talking about nervous system regulation and how horses can feel our energy and the state of our nervous system, being a prey animal. And I'll go into more of what I experienced, but tell me first about that, how horses can feel us since because they're a prey animal.
It's basically they need to have that ability in order to stay safe. It's primordial. It's the first thing that they need to that they need to have. Um, they need to know they can equines can recognize, for example, zebras can recognize if a lion is there just to go to the drinking hole, or if the lion is there waiting to find a chance to pounce on somebody in the herd. So
Right.
and they can just feel that from far away. They know when to run away, and they know when they can just stay put.
Mm,
That's how. And probably zebras' ability is a little bit higher than domestic horses, but I think a lot of it has remained.
okay.
And horses can. Um, that's why they're so fun to work with, because they can definitely sense in what yeah, how our own nervous system is, and in the present moments. What I wanted to say is they know when you're present, and they know when you're not
Mhm,
present.
mm,
Uh-huh. And what they really need you to be is to be present,
right.
to feel
Y-
safe.
Yeah, for them to feel safe because they grow up in a
Yes.
herd, so they grow up attuning to each other's nervous systems,
Yeah.
right? Like that's their survival mechanism,
Yes. Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
You said something really interesting where horses can tell with humans if we're hiding an emotion because they're so attuned to looking at predators that would seem calm on the outside, let's say like a tiger hiding in the bush. It seems calm on the outside, but it's ready to pounce to hunt you. So this
Yes.
horses have this uncanny ability to sense our incongruency you were sharing with me.
Yes, for sure, because exactly, a lion that appears to just be lounging is actually waiting to pounce on them, and they know that. So when the human, yeah, so when the human is around them, and on the outside they appear calm, but on the inside there's a lot of stuff going on
Right.
that doesn't, yeah, that is not congruent to the outer expression.
Right.
They feel very uncomfortable. And in these cases, if given the choice, they will leave. They will get away from you.
Oh, wow. So they'll
Uh-huh.
physically move away
Yes.
from someone
Uh-huh.
who has incongruency in their nervous
Mhm.
system, in their emotional body. Wow, that's
Yes. Uh-huh.
fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, because horses are used often for equine therapy and as a reflection of a person's emotional state, right?
Yes.
So if a
So
horse moves, yeah, go
the
ahead.
behavior of the horse can really put into light um, what is actually going on inside the person. And again, because the outside, we're actually really good at hiding what's going on inside. So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
Uh-huh.
makes me think of when I was a kid and I was so drawn to horses. Um, and, little girls often are obsessed with horses, young girls. Um, the way I was around the horses, I was emotionally expressed. So if I was sad I would just allow my sadness, and I might cry around the horses. If I was happy, there was like not the censoring going on.
Mhm.
And what I noticed in my recent ride with you, I'll just kind of share the experience, and maybe you can help explain it from a nervous system standpoint. When I was grooming the horses, I noticed there was some, I just paid attention to what was going on inside of me emotionally. And I was pretty neutral, but a little bit of activation energy. So I
Mhm.
noticed the activation energy in me, and then I just kind of stayed with it so that it relaxed. I stayed with it. And then the horse, your horse, responded by relaxing more with me. I just noticed that. And I was massaging his neck. This was Apollo that I was grooming, and his lips, remember I took a video of it, got
Uh-huh.
more
Like
wobbly and kind
hanging.
of
Uh-huh.
hanging,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is an
Uh-huh.
indication they're relaxing. And his head
Mhm.
started to, his eyes started to do this,
Uh-huh.
because the more I relaxed and kind of was the vessel for that as I groomed him, it seemed the more he was able to feel safe, as you described.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then on the contrary, when we went for a ride, and we were going through parts of the jungle that I felt uncomfortable with, because I had a mountain biking accident 2 years ago that now has me be more careful about
Mhm.
falling. So I shared with you that I noticed that I was starting to feel scared, and I was like, okay, Apollo is going to feel that I'm scared.
Yeah.
so so I stayed with my own scaredness in that moment. I was like, okay, I'm scared, and I stayed with the fear and kind of created a safe space for my own fear while I was riding Apollo. And that experience lasted, the emotional experience was maybe about 20 seconds, and something softened in my fear. Instead of me trying to push it away, I just stayed with it. And what did I share with you? I think I said that I just
You
normalized it.
you
Go ahead.
normalized it, and what I thought was interesting, because sometimes when these things happen, because they happen to me too, I get
Yep.
scared. Also when I'm riding, from because of past experiences,
Hmm.
was that you kind of communicated, and it doesn't really matter how you do it, but communicated to the horse that the fear was yours and not his.
Yes.
And I thought, that's a good way of probably doing it. And I think the horse responded to that, because again,
Yeah,
even when you're riding, they can feel that incongruence. So
exactly.
um, mhm.
Yes,
So
you
it's better,
reminded me. Yeah.
it's just better to own it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I did. And what I communicated to Apollo in my own way was, this is my fear. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna still, uh, what I kind of, in that 20 seconds, kind of agreed with myself was like, I'm gonna hold that fear, stay with it, not make it wrong. It's totally valid. But Apollo, you're not in danger. This is my own,
Uh-huh.
it's like, it was like I was telling him, you're not in danger. We're all good here. I'm just
Yeah.
processing my own stuff, and
Hmm.
I'll be back. I'll be back to guide you. Is kind of
Hmm.
what went on in that 20 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I noticed I relaxed afterwards. The fear was still there, but it would be what I would call healthy fear, because we were
Hmm.
moving through some trees where I
Yeah. There was
was
stuff
like,
going on for
yeah,
sure.
I
Yeah.
was like, I
Yeah.
got to pay
Uh-huh.
attention so I don't
Yes.
fall, because I haven't
Yes.
ridden in like,
Uh-huh.
I think the last time I rode was with you a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So then it shifted from being scared to being alert.
Hmm.
And then I was
Hmm.
like having fun with Apollo. I was like, okay, this is a game of being alert, and I'm going to be awake and alert to make sure I guide you properly. And meanwhile, he was like totally chill. And we even had a little test where there was a hiker with his two dogs, and they came along, and the hiker said to us, oh, just letting you know, my dogs are not very friendly. And sure enough, one of the dogs lunged at Apollo towards his legs, and I was like, okay, this is it. Apollo's going to take off. But he was super calm, like totally fine, and I was amazed. So
Uh-huh.
kind of proves our theory there. Yeah, really fascinating. I don't know what your reflection is on that, but you were interested in that, in observing that from your place of observing.
I didn't see the dog lunge for Apollo's legs, but of course you're going to be afraid. Yeah, and
Mhm.
again, that's totally healthy fear. You have
Right.
to get out. You have to get away.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then if Apollo wasn't that, didn't react more than the way he did, it's because he felt he didn't need to, and he was
Right.
regulated enough at the moment that it happened that he was able not to overreact, because they're just like us, it kind of builds up.
Right.
It builds up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what
The
we
fear,
talked about. Yeah.
and
In the,
that's
go ahead.
yeah. So it's the same thing for horses. That fear can build up, and if they don't down regulate,
Right.
it builds up, and
Exactly.
then it goes over threshold, and then they'll do something that is actually dangerous if you happen to be around them or riding them.
Or writing them.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
fascinating.
they do need to regulate their nervous system. They need to be alert, respond to whatever threat is there, and then go back to what do you call it, to homeostasis. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
So just like us, they have a window of tolerance, and
they have a window of tolerance.
if they exceed that window of tolerance, they will act like a prey animal and flee, fight or
Yes,
flight.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
wow, it just is so amazing to me how they are such incredible mirrors to the human nervous system. In a way, humans are prey and predator animals both.
Uh-huh. And
So yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, what is also interesting with horses is that they can also lose the ability to self-regulate.
Mm,
So there are actually some exercises that you can do with horses to teach them again to self-regulate. So you stimulate them, but to a point that is not going beyond threshold. You stay way under threshold, but you activate them. Um, and then you stop, for example, you ask them to move around you or something, and then you stop and you wait. And you wait until you see some calming signals happening, which in horses can be licking and chewing, lowering the head, a sigh. There's different calming signals that you can see, and only after they've done that do you do your next ask.
right.
um, and then you do your next ask, whatever it is, also every time staying beyond way below that threshold of which would create too much anxiety.
Right.
And yeah. uh, oh, I lost you for a bit.
Yeah.
And then you stop, you wait for the horse to regulate. And horses that are very anxious, you would say by nature,
Mhm.
um, actually, if you sometimes have to wait for quite a few minutes until they let down, like until they go back to
Right.
uh-huh, yeah, you just
To
have to
their
wait.
safe place.
Yeah,
Right.
you just
Mhm.
have to wait, let it happen. And the more you do that with a horse, the quicker that happens. The quicker the that coming back to homeostasis happens. And that's how you can start increasing the ask. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that can be transferred onto humans, because as we work with a horse, and because they respond so quickly, as you said, they're very clean in that sense.
Yes.
They mirror back to us the potential to go back into that threshold that has room for flexibility to respond to the environment, instead of being like maxed out
Uh-huh.
with like
Exactly.
overstimulation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we experience that while working with them, it kind of like does this reflective experience for us. And because nervous systems are contagious, right? So it's like
Uh-huh.
we can pick it up from their doing, and they pick it up from our doing. So it's like this
Mhm.
lovely symbiotic relationship.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, I find for me, for example, it's still a work in progress, but um, it was very hard for me to ask a horse to do something with firmness. I'm kind of I like to be nice. And sometimes you ask your horse to do something and he doesn't really feel like it, so you have to be a little bit firmer to ask him to do it. And I can quickly go into anger, like
Ah, yeah,
so I've learned how to be firm without being angry by working with horses, for example. So that's one thing that you can that you can learn by working with horses.
amazing.
How do you get your energy,
Yeah,
your inner energy at that state where a person or a horse will actually listen to you.
mhm,
So it's a great tool for working with your kids or working with whoever, any kind of relationship. Finding
exactly.
that strength in your own energy without going into anger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because in the absence of standing in our own firm grounding, anger becomes the only option to get our needs met
mhm,
if we don't have our own foundation.
yeah,
Wow, that's a
yeah,
great example. Love that.
yeah.
Wow. And it doesn't make the anger wrong. It just has us appreciate that, well, in the absence of being in our own container, anger will have to do a job that is lacking otherwise in our system.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, makes
But
so much sense.
if you can do it without the anger,
Exactly.
then might as well be
And
able
the
to do it.
relationship will have
Yeah,
more ebb and
exactly.
flow. Yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
instead of the beating into submission training that many of our horses are used
Uh,
to from the past, right? That term of what's the term? Green breaking, right? Yeah,
yeah.
it's literally
And yeah.
almost breaking their spirit. Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to bring up in this conversation, because it's to me that's been my kind of my last big aha moment with horses, and it's not something that I discovered by myself. I'm following a horseman. His name is Warwick Schiller, and his horsemanship is called the tune horsemanship.
Mm,
And what he one of the basic things is that attunement to the horse is noticing when it's feeling uncomfortable and showing him that you notice the change can make a huge difference in how in the connection and the trust that you will have between you and your horse.
right.
It's huge. So for example, let's say you want to even if your horse is a friendly horse, let's say you want to go and halter him, like put a halter around his head and to bring him somewhere, and you start walking towards him and he's like, well, I'd rather just hang in the field with my buddies. So he might just move his head away. He might not just walk away, he might just look away from you. If at that moment you see it and you stop and wait for a bit, he'll he'll go back. And then the horse will have noticed that you noticed his discomfort.
Got it.
And just the mere fact of doing that over and over again makes a huge difference. The horse
Mm,
feels seen, heard,
yes.
and all of that. Same
Safe,
thing
safe.
and
Yeah.
safe, and thus safe. Uh-huh.
Wow.
So instead of just going up to your horse and maybe the horse will stay there but he's turned away, you still put the halter
Right.
around him and bring him
Yeah.
back. You've broken that, you've broken that attunement. You've
Yes.
got the hook on the halter, but you've
Yep.
broken that kind of that
Yeah.
trust that comes from attunement. um and it's fascinating what you can get your horse to do, and that bond that you can create just from being that tiny bit more observant and present,
Yeah.
and showing them, yeah, I see you, I hear you, I get you. Uh-huh.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. And because that's the bond they have in their herd is they are
Yes.
attuned to each other's movements.
Yes.
Like I
Yes.
remember I was sharing with you when I was grooming Apollo, at one point in the beginning when your other horse was a little distance away, I'm not sure if it was her that wanted to get in to the corral with Apollo, or Apollo was like just wondering where she was, but he turned his back towards me. And I shared that with you. I was like, oh, I noticed he
Uh-huh.
turned his back towards me, so I'm going to wait. And I
Uh-huh.
did. And then something shifted in him where he felt more, I could tell that he felt more receptive to me again.
Mhm.
So I just
Mhm.
waited. And so those are examples where they do this in their herd all the time. They're
Yes.
fully aware of each
Yes.
other's states of
Exactly.
being.
For example, yeah, a practice that you can do with your horses is if something startles him, that a noise or something that they see, and they pick their head up and their ears are pricked forward and their eyes are wide open, and, there's no blinking. You look in the same direction they're looking. Like you make it really obvious that you're
Obvious
looking
pain.
in the same direction they're looking, and then you just kind of cock your leg, the same way a horse would, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, it's probably okay, you're right. And
You're right.
that also helps them bring themselves back to a relaxed state.
Down regulate, as you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Fascinating. It makes me think of like playing with our kids, how we do that too. We mimic our kids when we're playing with them, or they mimic us.
Uh-huh.
And then that teaches each other's nervous systems how to be like playful and attuned with each other.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Love
Uh-huh.
that. What a great subject. Well, thank you so much, Jane.
Yeah, I have
Any
to